That's an obscure tool. You may have never heard of it. Maybe you've never seen it. But if you're a framer and you're doing pickup work, or if you're in a wood shop like this and you don't have a jointer, you've already discovered how handy a power plane can be. And let me show you a couple of the tricks, a couple of the features, and some of the things you ought to know about whether you're doing rough work or fine work. So this is an electric version of these. This is the jack plane for heavier work. This is a block plane for finer work. And if you pay attention, you can do heavier work and finer work with this thing. It's pretty simple. It's a whirling blade holder. There's one blade. Where is that? My Makita used to have two. The Porter Capel had two. This has one. This goes around about 1,000,000 miles per hour. There's a kickstand, which will keep it up off the workbench so you can set it down even if the knife is still turning. There's the front plate, sole plate, that adjusts. You can see it's like the big jointer in the shop. The depth of cut is adjusted by that plate. This one stays where it's at, and you keep track at all times of whether you're pushing down harder on the back or the front. Depth, max cut 1/16 of an inch, down to 0. They are very politically correct because they've got the equivalent in millimeters over on this side. Thank you, British boys. You can operate it either right or left-handed. And so let's put it through its paces and show you a couple of things you can do with this that sometimes you just have to do. Okay, so this board doesn't have a straight edge on it. It's flat and it's straight in this plane, but this edge is twisted and it's humped. So I'm going to mark the center of the hump, which is about here. And then I'm going to begin to reduce that about 1/16. I'm going to go a little less than 1/16. I'm going to take it down to a 32nd. And I'm going to take a pass about that long, and then about that long, and then about that long, and we'll see how it looks. First thing I got to do is roll it off of the kickstand like this. One more. Another thing to point out is, unlike a skill saw that you run in front of you, this thing likes it better when I'm alongside of the work. Regulate the pressure fore and aft. I'll do more on that in a second. But if you're standing alongside of it with good footing and running it, it seems more coherent. And part of the thing you must never forget is that just like a router, there's no guard on that blade. A router bit is right out in the open. That cutter head is right out in the open. The only thing protecting you from that blade is your brain. All right, let's see how we did. I think we've got to go some more. Oh yeah, the apexes are just long. I got to set the depth a little deeper. I'm going to set it down to 1/16 of an inch, and if I didn't mention it, and if you didn't pick up on it, what we're trying to do is get one edge straight enough to run it through the table saw. If you've got a jointer, this is a waste of time. If you don't have a jointer, it's kind of a question, isn't it? Okay, so there's where that is. Let's start about here. See if we're any better. Oh yeah, we're getting better. We're still right back there. I'm going to take some off. We're almost straight enough. And now I need to protect my ears. And so I've got to say, these things are loud, and I just kind of wasn't prepared. I've got good enough eye protection on to suit me, and now my ears are better. I'm going to do this one more time. 2 in the middle, and one end to end. That's straight enough to go on a table saw. Now let's talk about the entrance and the exit from your cut. When you come up to it, you're pushing down hard on the front because that's what's establishing the trajectory of the piece, right? If you let the back drop down, bam, you get a big old snipe. Let me do that. This could be violent. Ouch! You don't want that. You want to hold down on the front. And then right here, the opposite thing. I hold down on the back. If I don't do that, here's what happens. Snipe. So weight distribution is a big deal entering and exiting the cut. So I would guess that power planers make more tons of shavings on framing sites than in wood shops, because you bang the walls together, you nail the studs to the plates and you brace them and you put in your headers and your cripples and your trimmers and you raise up the wall, and then 2 months later it's time to hang the drywall and you wonder why they're not straight. Those walls were straight when I put them in. Yeah, but they shrink and they warp over time. Can you see there's a knot right there? This knot, there's a little kink in that stud right there. It's not terrible. But if that's standing in a wall, that's going to be a bulge in the drywall. I had a job for Del Webb in Sun City, Las Vegas, doing nothing but doing pickup framing. Every day, 3 houses needed to have the studs straightened and the backing replaced and the blocks around the HVAC ducts, and there was a list of things we had to do, but most of it was straightening studs. And so we wore out Makita planers. By the way, I've had Makita, did I mention this? I've had Makita, Porter Cable, and now Bosch. Bosch is built like a tank. Makita all around was the handiest, most agile, most dependable, user-friendly power plane for my money. But anyhow, back to our case. You got a stud. It's got a kink right at that knot. That knot's a defect, but it's in the wall. Got to deal with it. And so you come along with an 8-foot level, you straight edge across the plane of the wall, you identify the high spot. In this case, now you wouldn't have to mark it if you were doing this in a house frame because you could see it. But that's got to go down. You do overlapping passes. Gone, or almost, oh, still a little bit right there. Straight, or at least straight enough for drywall. Lots and lots and lots of work in a framed house before the drywall goes on. So I learned from Stumpy Nubs. That guy knows what's going on in a wood shop, okay? I can't even carry his water. Stumpy, I salute you. I learned about winding sticks. You see this? It's a way to identify twist in a board, which, as you know, is sometimes a hard thing to see. But if you put those winding sticks on there, and the masking tape's a nice touch so you can actually cross-sight, and then you cross-sight, wow, there's a mile of twist in that board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that this corner's got to go down, and I'm going to mark that this corner's got to go down. And we're going to play with this just a little bit. Even though it makes no difference in a stud and a wall, it makes a big difference if you're trying to get a piece of oak flat on one side so you can run it through a thickness planer. Just like using a jack plane or a block plane, you start where it's worst and then overlap fading away to where it's not so bad. In this case, so there's that. Oh, one more pass. Now I do the opposite thing on the opposite corner. So this is way better, but it's just representative. I would have to do some more work to get this all in a plane. I just sort of exaggerated the fixes at the ends. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you may not realize that a twist doesn't come out on a surface planer. The twist just goes through the planer and you have a uniform thickness twisted board. So this way, particularly in a shorter, nicer hardwood board, you can get the top close enough to flat that you can turn it over and then plane off the corners with your thickness planer. You get my point. Now the difference, one of the differences between a power planer and a belt sander, you're doing the work in all positions and all directions, right? Not so with a power planer. You start bringing it back, it's a climb cutting router. It's going to want to come back. So it's only cutting on the go ahead. You can regulate the depth. You can plane off the bottom of the door. We're going to do that in just a second. I didn't mention, and I should have, that not only do you protect your eyes and especially your ears, but when you're planing right by your belly, you make sure your shirt tails don't get tangled up in that whirling cutter head. I mean, you can visualize that could be a gruesome line item in a newspaper. So we're going to wrap this up by taking the bottom off a door because it's been dragging on the carpet in my dad's walk-in closet for years. Fortunately, they don't go into their closet much. But I'm going to shorten it, so there's about 1/4 of an inch of freeboard. I'm going to take about 1/4 of an inch off. And let me show you one of the things to think about when you're using a power planer to shorten the end of a door. So interior door work is fussy work, right? I mean, right down to the micron, except when you're shortening the bottom and it's just dragging on carpet and you want to take off 1/4 or 3/16, you can use your pencil and your finger as a scribe. And you know what? If I can route off up to that line, we're going to have plenty of clearance. Now here's a warning. Can you see on the bottom of this door that this bottom rail, the grain is lengthwise. The board's running this way. This is side grain, but the style on this edge of the door is end grain. So if I feed that planer into here and it's undercutting, when it gets to that end grain, it's going to split off the outside. It'll be a mess that if you could find the chip, it would be hard to fix. So you have to plane in from both ends to avoid tearing the world up. Let me get my earplugs and see how we do. I've got to score that line with a knife. Last thing, if you're building decks or doing beam work, sometimes you want to put a chamfer on the corner of a beam. Now I think I did a test chamfer with a 45-degree chamfer cutter and a router, and I mean, that's just gorgeous. But you don't have a router out all the time on a post and beam job, so you can just center the corner of your board on the V in that front sole plate, and then you can either eyeball. Well, that's how you're going to do it. You're going to eyeball it. You're going to follow that and hit for a 45, or maybe you want something more shallow. Let's try that and see how we do. So there you go. Is that faster than a router? Probably not, but it's tougher than a router, right? In some ways, it's safer than a router. It's more conducive maybe for a deck job, perhaps, although you may have your router out anyhow. But there's a lot of things that a power plane will do fast. A lot of things a power plane will do that other tools just won't do. And so you probably ought to have one. And whatever it is that you have, practice. Practice. You probably could tell that I don't use this every day, right here when I was doing this demonstration. It's not foreign to me, but it's not familiar. And if we don't get familiar with our tools, we shouldn't expect to produce work that looks like it was made by someone that's familiar with their tools. So practice. Don't be afraid to do things that you haven't done before. And then when you do them, just keep doing them until you get them right. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.